Co-hosts Mike Tuman and Paul Burvid every Saturday, noon until 2 on WRMN 1410 AM, the Fox River Valley Media Network, streaming on WRMN1410.com. Our studio number here is 847-931-1410. Our text is 505-926-1410. Or you can hit us up in the comments on the YouTube live channel, WRMN 1410. As always, you can catch our previous shows on the Chief Guard of the Republic YouTube channel. And something really, before I get on with anything else, it's just with deepest sympathies, Specialist Sarah Beckstrom, she died Thanksgiving 2 days ago. It's absolutely terrible. Absolutely the most heinous thing, I think, that's happened in the last 24 years in the United States. I really got to say that. Just an outstanding National Guard soldier that volunteered to do duty, unarmed duty in our nation's capital, which is sad to say is one of the most dangerous places on earth. But she was killed by a cowardly, just an absolutely cowardly, I don't even, a poor mimic of a human being, a very cowardly person that drove cross country to commit this act. He was given a good life in the United States, claimed that he didn't like where he was living and was coming back because he was fearing for his life. And first thing he does is kill one of our soldiers. My prayers going out for the full recovery of Sergeant Andrew Wolf, who was her partner out there and who tried to fight back, who tried to fight back against this guy, wounding him. And he was wounded when he was taken into custody. And I don't even want to mention his name. I was in I did 3 tours in Afghanistan, and you call up and argue with me and tell me that many of the Afghan people you knew were fantastic and great, and I'm sure there's one or two out there. I have met some an Afghan national that was actually in the Army Reserve. He had been an officer in the Afghan National Army. He came to the United States and became an enlisted soldier in our Army Reserve. He was okay, seemed okay, but after 3 years of being over there, I wouldn't let one of them come into this country. I would be sitting there at the State Department and saying, denied, denied, denied. We've talked about this in the past, and I'm going to make it very clear here. Title 10 of the United States Code, and the United States Code is written by our congressmen and our senators. All right, either a senator introduces a bill and it gets passed by the Senate, then it goes to the House of Representatives, they pass it, and then it goes to the president to be signed. Once it's signed by the president, it can only be reviewed and interpreted by the Supreme Court, should such a case get up to the Supreme Court, should someone have standing to bring it up there. So if you don't like the laws are on the books, then you really need to pressure your congressmen and your senators to change these laws or to eliminate the laws. If they're not an actual amendment to the Constitution, it's a simple 51% vote to get to the president's desk. So when they had 51% in both houses and the presidency, if they didn't like these laws that were on the books, or if they never bothered to read any of the laws on the books, then it's on them, and it's on you for not pushing them. So Title 10 of the U.S. Code 12406, National Guard and Federal Service. The United States or any of the Commonwealth's possessions is invaded or is in danger of invasion by a foreign nation. There is a rebellion or danger of rebellion against the authority of the government of the United States, or the president is unable with regular forces to execute the laws of the United States. The president may call into federal service members and units of the National Guard of any state in such numbers as he considers necessary to repel the invasion, suppress the rebellion, or execute those laws, orders for those purposes shall be issued, suppressed, Okay. Third, the final paragraph. The president may call into federal service members and units of the National Guard and of any state in such numbers as he considers necessary to repel the invasion, suppress the rebellion, or execute those orders for these purposes shall be issued through the governors of the states, or in the case of the District of Columbia, through the commanding general of the National Guard of the District of Columbia. The commanding general of the National Guard, because District of Columbia, people think, oh, we should make it a state, but there was a big thing when we originally founded this country on keeping the capital out of control of any of the states. So therefore, the District of Columbia, with its National Guard, falls strictly under federal control. Federal laws guide it. Their city council makes laws for the District of Columbia, which are considered federal laws and federally enforceable. All right, so well within his rights. If the governor of West Virginia didn't want his people to be activated and become federal troops under President Trump, he could have refused. Yet he did not, so they were activated. So everything, in my opinion and red opinion, in 38 years in the service, all right, Army Reserve, National Guard, multiple call-ups, for all sorts of reasons, everything's legit, 100% legit. So if anyone goes out there and tries to flip this on, well, that person wouldn't have died if they hadn't been called up to active duty by President Trump. That is true. That is true. That's true. They could have been hit by a bus walking out of their car. But here's the thing. Because they were called up by President Trump, and because, or any president has called forces up, right? Because the atmosphere out there is so toxic against our current president, and they turn it toxic against anything he does, and they're trying to turn people against him, right? They don't want to turn people, quote, against the military, but they want to turn the military against him, but the military has to follow his rules. And it's such a toxic situation that it emboldens people to say, hey, everyone hates these guys, they're not there illegally, so I might as well go and shoot them, And that's what the press has done that time and time again, dating back to Vietnam. These guys were drafted, they went over there, they did what they were told, all right? The press had zoomed the war up to be bad, everything to be bad, the soldiers to be bad. They blew isolated incidents completely out of proportion and made it look like every soldier over there was responsible. And these guys come home and they're treated terribly, absolutely terribly. Just as terrible for no reason except the press spun up. What do you call it? They created their own vision.
Agenda.
They have an agenda, and they created their own vision, and they pushed it off on people. And I'm sorry, there's enough dumb people out there that believe everything the press tells them because they put it right in their head. Why would they say it on the air if it wasn't true? Couldn't they be liable? Yeah, sure. When you get people that actually lied to Congress, right, and a judge throws out the case based on a technicality. Dug for it, found it, got rid of it. So, but all right. So I got that out of. I mean, I can't tell if you're not mad out there. If you're lividly mad about this, lividly angry about this, mad as hell, and I'm not going to take it anymore, screaming out the window, you're still not mad enough. You are still not mad enough. If you turn on network TV and watch the network news, you are not mad enough. If you turn on cable TV and watch the cable news channels, you are not mad enough. If you buy any product that's advertised on these news channels, you are not mad enough. You need to be madder. You need to say, hey, We want we want MSNBC or NBC News to have a 0 rating. A 0 rating. You know, or 100,000 people a night. Whippy, until the guy's making the money, like I said about the shutdown. Shutdown was going to last long enough until the government contractors that were making money off the people that were working for the government and other things started to lose enough money, then the shutdown would end. And be the same thing there. As soon as they stop making money, these news channels stop making money from their advertisement, that's the only time the editor is going to be forced by the owners who are taking a loss to change their editorial view. And believe me, they have no principles. They will change their view in a second, and they will lie to your face and say, no, I didn't change my view. That's always been my view. And you can play it back to them on videotape with them saying those words, and they go, well, you misunderstood me. But they don't care about the damage that they already caused. So if you don't agree with me, call into the show, right? We'll discuss it. Yes, I am angry. I am animated. I'm not going to yell at you. I'm not going to be mean to you. I'm not going to call you names. About the worst thing you'll hear is click. All right, Paul, I got that out of my system. You got any anger you want to get out of your system?
No, but I think that we should immediately start proceedings against this Herman Goring guy in a military tribunal, and then just have it done and over with, and give him his due process under the a military tribunal, and then that's it. Be done with it.
If you put him under military tribunal, all right, here's the thing: you're giving him a status. You're giving him a status of a legal enemy combatant.
He is. Well, he is.
He is an illegal enemy combatant.
Well, he is, because he's not in uniform, and he went across the country. He had a plan, and let's do it. Let's be over with it.
Yeah. Well, we're a country of laws, and we're going to talk.
And you know what? It'll be done a lot faster than 12, 18, 20 years.
Yes, it will take time.
I want this stuff over with, because the guy that shot McKinley, he got his fair trial. McKinley, I think, died around October something, or November something, or December, and the dude, within 25 days was tried, convicted, and executed. Let's go. Let's give him his. Let's. If he wins, he wins. If he, why are we waiting? Because the longer he is there, the more of a martyr he becomes to whoever. And let's do this fast. We're all about speedy trial. We're all about fair justice. Let's give them some. When you show people that we're right there, down with it, you'll see a lot less of this probably. And for the guy to have a plan, and I saw, I don't know if it's true or not, his family's already back there, wherever there is.
He sent them back to Afghanistan?
Yeah.
So because he was so afraid, afraid to be there, that he got him and his whole family out, right? Family out. And here, I'm going to get even more mad about this. This is where our State Department needs to live in a real world. They need to get off the rose-colored glasses and step outside of their bubble. All right? They need to be down there in the dirt in the real world and not protected or anything else. They should be embedded with the infantry at a COP somewhere. All right? Eating the same food and dealing with these people on one-on-one basis. So what gets me is that we bring in all these refugees from Syria, from Iraq, from Afghanistan, from Ethiopia, for all these, you know, from Ukraine, all these places that are in turmoil and have been in turmoil, right? But we bring them in here and they go on the public dole, public aid, right? They're getting money, which is more money than they've ever had, a higher standard of living, you know. They got a place to live and everything, and they get enough money up, and they're like, hey, let's go visit the relatives back in Syria. Soon as they leave this country, right? Because they still have their passport. They don't have a U.S. passport. They still got their foreign passport. They got their visa. They go visit. They come back, you know. No one stops them coming back in. As soon as they leave the country, void their visas. Void it. Don't let them back in. But I just went to visit my sick grandmother. Okay, let's stay with your sick grandmother. But my family's back in, you know, Spokane, right? And you go, well, oh, that's cool. Well, they could go visit your grandmother too. No, we're not stopping them from leaving. You see, but they don't do that. They know the problem exists. It absolutely exists. They'll turn a blind eye and go, well, that's only 1 in a million. No, it's not. It's quite a few, right? So they're laughing at you saying, oh, I'm afraid to go back. And then a year later, they're back there. What's changed?
Nothing.
Nothing, except that we gave them the money to get back there and to spend it over there and come back with being re-indoctrinated over there. They come re-indoctrinated here. The other thing, having worked in Afghanistan for 3 years, right, is that these guys, right, they were, quote, working for us. They were getting paid by us. We were paying them money. That's it. That's how they worked for us. We paid them money. They were collecting on us. They were giving information and intelligence on us. Sometimes they were actively involved in ambushes against our troops. And they all had that, oh, I work for the U.S. Army. And so when they come over here, they go, oh, I got this old card here. And the State Department says, go ahead, boom. And they worked for the CIA. The CIA. Oh, I don't even want to. What they did, their gross, massive incompetence. Gross and massive incompetence. Early in the war, they brought one of their guys working for them, right, onto a base and blew up 8 soldiers. Yay! Because the CIA said they were good. They were good. He's our guy. Don't worry about him. He's our guy. Ba-boom! You know? So just to say that he worked for the CIA doesn't mean a dang thing. I would use that as a negative against him. I mean, like, if he was knocking on the door to get in with people with pitchforks and torches and paddle axes chasing him, and he says, you got to let me in, I worked for the CIA, I'd close another door. I'd make sure that guy never got in. I just don't, it's not that, it's a complete matter of distrust, right? And one of the things that got me is this guy comes over in 2021, all right, under someone else's regime, right? When everything was falling apart, even though they were told countless occasions for 20 years that the Afghan National Army wasn't going to stand once we left. It would be gone in a matter of, they said a month. It'll last maybe a month. They were wrong. It lasted maybe an hour, right? They were gone. And guess what? They all blended most of them blend right back into the Taliban. Who were they working for anyways? Because there was a shadow government that our State Department, our DIA, everyone knew about it. No one wanted to acknowledge it because there was a failure on their part then. Oh, especially the State Department, who couldn't get the massively corrupt Afghan government, on board with just spending 1% of the money we're giving them on the actual people. They're too busy thieving it, stealing it, sending it to Iran, or it's nuts. When he says all these countries in turmoil, right, that we're closing doors to them, I'm like, okay, that's cool. Close the doors. But what about that one family that's just trying to get away? Go to another country. United States isn't the only country in this world. Hey, listen, you're a Palestinian. You're being harassed by the Israelis, right, over there. You don't like them? Okay. Get in your boat, cross the Arabian Sea, and go to Saudi Arabia. Just land on the beach there and walk in. Hey, they'll give you refugee status. Just tell them you're afraid of the Israelis. Think that's going to happen? But
No.
all of a sudden, President Trump says, we're closing the door to these guys. Someone else take up the slack. We're tired of them coming in and blowing up our country and hurting our people and stealing from us. Stealing, thieving. You bring them into the country, right? They're living in a mud hut over there, terrible conditions, absolutely terrible conditions. They come over here, their conditions, even under the most poverty, right? What we consider poverty here, have improved 100%, 1,000%, their conditions have improved. So then they steal money and they send it back to the country where their conditions were 1,000 times worse. It's like, who does that? Enemies of the United States. That's who does that. People that are destroying the United States slowly from within. Parasites. Some parasites keep the body alive. Some parasites are kind of good. People say leeches are bad. But if you ever been leeched, you actually get this feeling of euphoria and everything. And leeches have a purpose. If you have a gross amputation and they try to sew the limb back on, they use leeches to open up the capillaries in the area and helps heal, right? So some natural parasites are good. They actually serve a purpose. The bacteria in our bowels serve a purpose, right? And then some are really bad. Some parasites, some societies are just parasitic societies, right? And you let the people in and they don't change their parasitic ways. They continue on and get worse. All right, we'll be back after the break. I think for years living over there, that no one ever bothered them and gave them an inspection. Right? So we were under General Order Number 1. It said that you couldn't drink. Couldn't drink because who needs a drunken soldier? We're under General Order Number 1. Active duty wasn't under General Order Number 1 yet. So all these kids, if they're 21, and some of them even not 21, you get liquor anyways, had all sorts of booze in their rooms. But the rooms were actually filthy and everything. And we got there on a Sunday, and this active duty lieutenant colonel, some big guy, right? Big gym muscle guy, shows up on a Sunday, and you could tell he was there just to flex. He was like, he was flexing. I'm an active duty colonel and you just guys are stinking reservists, everything. And so my guys are coming to me. They see the rooms that they got to live in and they're filthy pigsties. One guy was rebuilding a motorcycle engine on the spare bed in his room. So my guys got to sleep on a oil-soaked mattress, right? They didn't have any toilet paper. The light bulbs were all gone because they hadn't been replaced and everything. And they tell me that there's booze all over the place. Like these guys, just half open bottles, everything all over. Like these guys were, I mean, you take a 16-year-old and you give him money and have him live in his room and his mom's never checking on him, right? So I go up to this lieutenant colonel because our captains were useless, right? And I go to him and I go, hey, excuse me, Colonel, all right? My boys are telling me that your guys have all sorts of alcohol in the room. Well, we're under General Order number 1 that says that we can't drink. So I would appreciate it if your guys, that my guys will be staying with for these 2 weeks, put the booze away. This guy gets all up, well, about the same height. Maybe he's an inch or two taller than me. And he goes, I'm not denying my guys anything they're entitled to. I'm like, oh, okay. What was I asking? For them to put the booze away, right? I says, hey, you guys, y'all got camera phones? And they said, yeah. I go back to your room and start taking pictures. I want you to text them all those pictures to me, because tomorrow morning, bright and early, Monday morning, I am walking myself to the base commander, and I'm going to knock on his open door policy, and I'm going to show him the pictures of these rooms and the condition they're in with all these kids living there, all right? In filthy conditions. And all of a sudden, because I said it loud enough to be heard, they weren't going to feed us because they said, oh, we didn't tell the mess hall you were coming, and, we don't have transportation. All of a sudden, they start, this colonel talks to a major, and the major goes, oh, we're going to feed you. Everyone get on the buses. We're going to take you over to mess hall. Suddenly, we're going to get fed, right? We weren't going to get it before. We're going to have to go and buy a sandwich somewhere or order pizza. So now he calls in, they call in all the company commanders, all the first sergeants, all the senior NCOs, all their supply guys, and they GI that barracks. They clean it like the white tornado. They go through it, clean everything, just like, and it was a nightmare for them. They had to go get, I guess people had to go out of pocket, go to the Walmart and get toilet paper and light bulbs because supply didn't have any. They had to get cleaning materials. They had to clean these rooms. They had to go switch out, other mattresses. And the only thing I had asked for is this little thing, right, to be done. And guy got on my face. But his people have been living there for months like that. They're just in filth. You have to. They're adults, but they're not adults. The first time they left home was in basic training. They got broken for 8 weeks, maybe another 8 weeks in their AIT school. Then they get to active duty, and all of a sudden, they're put in a room by themselves, and no one's screaming at them when they're in their room. They just don't maintain. They haven't had enough of that as in a group barracks. And so a lot of this doesn't fall. It doesn't fall on the buildings themselves. The buildings were new. They were sufficient, all right? They were good. They had beds. They were 3-man rooms. We used to have like 40 guys living on a floor, 40 people in bunk beds living on a floor, just like, Full Metal Jacket. That's where you live. That's where you went to, you're going to this class. Everyone's in there. No one's in a private room, right? But these guys got private rooms, and it was their leadership that betrayed them. Because you have to have some discipline, and you have to know how to enforce the discipline, right? And they were saying, well, these guys, they're stuck on the base. They can't live off base. They don't have cars. So they called it BOSS, Better Opportunities for Single Soldiers. And it was just, it's just like letting the 2-year-old pick out their own breakfast at the grocery store. It's going to be ice cream and candy bars. And that's what these lower enlisted guys were doing. So the barracks were falling apart because they weren't being maintained. And they weren't being maintained because the leadership was ignoring these guys off duty, letting them do basically whatever they wanted. Like crazy stuff. Yeah. And, the other failure, one of the failure, when they brought up a new brigade of the 82nd Airborne, they said, where are we going to put them? We don't have housing for them. But they had condemned barracks, which were newer than the barracks that were built during World War II, where the Guard and Reserves all stayed before they deployed. But they have these cinder block long barracks, and they have been abandoned because they've been condemned. And they said, well, we'll put them in these old buildings here, and they're just going to deploy overseas. So while they're deployed overseas, the rear echelon make sure that those barracks get fixed up, right? So they go overseas for a year, they come back, nothing's been done. Again, they're betrayed. But who are they betrayed by? Their own leadership. But who is their leadership? No one's looking down on the leadership and double checking, because some people are just too high rank to go in there to check or send someone over there and say, hey, you know, are those drains cleared in the bathroom so there's not a foot of water in the showers? Yeah. So it's to throw money at repairing these things. They should look at the worst of these barracks and relieve the commander's chain of command, bottom to top, for cause. You allowed these conditions to exist. That is not in the good practices of the morale standards and good discipline of the Army. All right? We'll put you somewhere where you don't have to be in charge of troops anymore. Enjoy TRADOC, buddy. Or something like that, you know. But they're going to throw money at it and build more new buildings. And what I laugh about that is that the new buildings that they built, right? For case in point, Fort Sheridan, right? They built a new reserve center there. I wonder if I told this story out there, right? So when Fort Sheridan shut down as an active duty post, it had been an active duty post at once. It shut down. They took the north part of it, which was all the old brick buildings, the officer housing, the senior enlisted housing. They took that and they gave it to a developer. Made it lovely. It's beautiful. Fantastic. The south side of the post had a bunch of double wides on there and had all the World War II barracks, the wooden ones. So they put reserve units into these wooden barracks and into the old barracks that they had for the cinder block ones that they had for recruiting command. But these buildings were designed to be housing units, not to be offices for reserve units, you know, not to be drill areas or anything. So as these wooden barracks fell apart on top of us, they would move us to another one until that fell apart. And then finally we went into these old barracks, the cinder block ones, which were falling apart at a slower rate. So they decide that they're going to build a new reserve center, a new National Guard armory, new reserve buildings, right? So they build one, and it's like 2 years behind schedule, over budgeted and everything. And the only reason we moved in is because they were going to demolish the building that we were in. Then we'd have nowhere to go. So we move in over there, they sign for everything, and there's a whole thing with that. Once you sign for it, it's like yours, even though you're not allowed to check it out to see if it actually works or whatever. So in the old barracks, the old recruiting barracks there where we had our offices, there had been a water fountain that had never worked right. It would overflow, it would clog up, whatever, probably because people were spitting their tobacco juice in there all the time, which is disgusting, but that's an Army thing, right? And so we had asked to get it repaired from the Corps of Engineers. And this had been at least 2 years that I know of, maybe 5 years. The day before they tore that building down, here come the Corps of Engineers with a brand new water fountain, and they installed it just so you could tear the building down around it. That's the government. That's the government, right? So now they're in this building, and because they pay for like one architect to build a one-size-fits-all, all right, training center for Guard and Reserve. So if you're down in Florida or Georgia, a lot of bases in Georgia, right, or Texas, all right, and you have solar-powered water heaters, as long as the sun's up, guess what you get? You get hot water, right? But in February at Fort Sheridan, under clouds, and you've just done your physical fitness training and everyone's sweated up and you got to go take showers, guess how much hot water there was?
Zero.
None. It was like you're surprised the pipes weren't frozen. There was no backup for that. No one stood up and said, excuse me here. Sorry, but it gets cold and it gets cloudy. What are you going to do? And no one asked that question because no one cared. Then, all right, another thing for troops where they make these regulations. So the full-time people that were there at this building, they put in a gym, a nice little gym, right? Has the weights, has the machines, the Nautilus machines and everything in there, has ellipticals. The full-timers decided that they didn't want part-timers, all right, the guys that only showed up on the weekends to use these gyms because they would wreck them or whatever they would say. So that was what was put out by the senior full-time person on that base, was like, no part-timers could use this. So the commanding general of the 75th Division comes in to try to use it, and they stopped him. I said, no, you're a part-timer. You're not HER. We told him, you can't go in there. Whose right is that? That's for all of us to use. But what they didn't realize also was the air conditioning unit and the heating unit and everything wasn't checked for humidity levels, and the humidity levels were too high, and the whole system got flooded with black mold. So they couldn't. It was too expensive because the whole building was infested with it. They couldn't remediate it, right? So they had to they had to condemn the building, tear it down after they built it. I mean, how long have we been building brick and mortar buildings in the United States?
Couple hundred years.
Yeah. And how do you spend millions and millions of dollars? You worked in the state of Illinois building, didn't you?
I did.
What happened when it get real hot in the summer?
Well, they didn't have enough money to use insulated glass, so every row was insulated, uninsulated, insulated, uninsulated. So when we first moved in there, it was like 108 degrees.
Nice. I heard stories of people trying to throw chairs through the windows.
Yeah, and then they forgot to put a muffler system on the elevator shaft because there was a low one. I actually lost some of my hearing because of that, because I was initially out in a ring where I had a cubicle, and it was terrible. I mean, it was noisy, and it was crazy.
Yeah. All right. So my words to our Secretary of War is, beyond looking at buildings that are dilapidated, find out why. And then find out those people responsible for not instilling the discipline and the maintenance. Because you can't fire all the lower enlisted. They need shepherding. They need a good shepherd there. And if the shepherd isn't watching them, they'll just do whatever they want. Tear the place up. There's got to be some limitations. And that's going to save you a little bit of discipline is going to save you billions of dollars in repairs, remediation, and building new facilities. So I could say these guys actually have it pretty good. They actually have it pretty good in the rooms, the square footage that they have, the beds. They don't have to share with 39 other people. They're only sharing with maybe 2 people at the most. But it's not the toll. Sometimes it's the person. So when we come back, we'll have some more discussion here. You want to call in? It's 847-931-1410. Want to read some action-packed, exciting pulp fiction? Read the works of Michael Tooman, now featuring the international crime thriller, I Married a Bot Madam. Available on Amazon in hardcover, paperback, and Kindle editions. The paperback is also available at other book retailers. Check out Michael Tooman's webpage at silink.net. That's Papa Sierra Yankee Lima India November Kilo dot November Echo Tango. Join your co-hosts Mike Tooman and Paul Burvitt on our weekly radio hour, Chief Guard of the Republic, where we talk about all things national security, defense, personal security, safety, and dealing with law enforcement situations. Call in 847-931-1410. Ask us questions. We will get you answers. Every week, Saturday, noon to 1 on 1410 AM WRMN Elgin. Streaming on WRMN1410.com. Chat with us on WRMN's YouTube live channel.
Your hometown radio station since 1949. We are WRMN AM 1410, Elgin time, 1 o'clock.
Breaking news at Town Hall on Bob Agnew in Washington. The holiday shopping season off to a strong start.
Shoppers shopped till they dropped on Black Friday. Adobe Analytics, which tracks e-commerce, says U.S. consumers spent a record $11.8 billion online Friday. Traffic was especially heavy from 10 a.m. to 2 p.m. local time, when some $12.5 million passed through online shopping carts every minute. Adobe says even on Thanksgiving Day, consumers broke records, spending $6.4 billion online. Software company Salesforce estimates that Black Friday online sales totaled $18 billion in the U.S., $79 billion globally. I'm Donna Warder.
And UPS is addressing its holiday delivery logistics in the wake of the recent crash of one of its jets in Kentucky.
UPS grounded its fleet of McDonnell Douglas MD-11s after a fiery crash in Louisville, Kentucky earlier this month. 14 people were killed, including the plane's crew of 3, when the left engine detached during takeoff. Now the company says that fleet is expected to miss the peak holiday season as it goes through inspections and possible repairs. An internal memo predicts it'll be several months before the MD-11 fleet returns to service. UPS says it intends to rely on contingency plans to deliver for customers throughout the peak holiday season. I'm Ben Thomas.
Meantime, airlines around the world scrambling after Airbus ordered an urgent software rollback on thousands of its A320 jets. A lot of snow, rain, and cold weather await travelers for the rest of the Thanksgiving holiday weekend, with winter storm warnings posted on Friday across the northern part of the country and more snow falling over the Great Lakes region. Storm warnings and advisories extending from Montana to New York. More on these stories at townhall.com.
In a shocking new 5-part series from Kevin Sorbo, Prescription to Kill reveals a lethal FDA cover-up.
Americans have witnessed a dramatic rise in mass killings. At a school, a house of worship, a crowded theater, a packed concert, leaving behind a trail of death and destruction. But what's behind this sudden surge of lethal violence? One determined researcher cracked open the FDA vault, exposing for the first time secret files linking prescription drugs to mass shootings and infamous murders.
There is a reason that we are the leader in unprovoked mass murder in this country, and it's our over-prescription of psychiatric drugs. There's no doubt about it.
In Prescription to Kill, we investigate the hidden connection between the pharmaceutical industry and America's culture of violence.
What their doctor doesn't know could kill you. Discover the truth that could save many lives. Don't miss Prescription to Kill. Watch it now on salemnow.com. That's salemnow.com.
Deputy Secretary of Agriculture Stephen Baden has some good news for American farmers. He says recent trade deal with China is good news for those who grow for a living.
They have committed for the remainder of this calendar year to buy 12 million tons of soybeans, and for each of the remaining 3 years in the president's term, a minimum amount of 25 million tons of American soybeans.
Economist Steve Moore says things are much better than Americans are being led to believe when it comes to media reports about the U.S. economy. And while he is bullish on America right now, Moore admits there is one area that's a little tricky for most families.
It is true. Housing is very expensive right now because, you know, the the value of houses have gone up so much. We're not building enough houses in this country, but we're going to solve that problem like we solve every problem.
Moore was interviewed this week by the Salem Radio Network. You'll find breaking news and analysis at townhall.com. Boeing and NASA have agreed to keep astronauts off the company's next Starliner flight to the International Space Station, settling instead for a trial run with nothing on board but cargo.
That announcement comes 8 months after the first and only Starliner crew hitched a return trip to Earth aboard SpaceX. In 2024, NASA test pilots Butch Wilmore and Sonny Williams managed to dock Boeing Starliner to the International Space Station. But the capsule had so many problems that NASA ordered the capsule to return to Earth empty, leaving the astronauts stuck on the space station for more than 9 months. Boeing engineers are still working on Starliner's thruster and other issues. Boeing says they are still committed to the Starliner program. I'm Lisa Dwyer.
U.S. stocks ended higher in a shortened Black Friday session, closing at 1 p.m. Eastern Time on Friday, and it was a fifth straight day of gains, capping the best weekly rally since the month of June.
There's a price war in the insurance business, and you may be paying too much. Call the Term Lifeline right now and see if you can save 40%. $500,000 plans and up, that's our specialty. Even great.
Gets an order of protection out against them, right? And a warrant for his arrest for beating her. So he's got a warrant and he's got an order of protection, right? He goes into court. He claims that she is abusing the child and not taking care of the child, right? And he gets, right, he's suing for custody now. But he's in this court, and he's got a warrant and order of protection, and now she gets notified, and she says, this has got to be some BS, so she doesn't show up in court. So the judge gives this guy a default finding and says, you now have custody of your child. He goes to the daycare center, picks up his child in Ohio, and flees to Chicago with the child, kidnaps the child. She goes and says, where's my child? Well, the judge gave him legal custody because you didn't show up in court. And she goes, what do you mean? He's got an order, I got an order of protection against him and a warrant for his arrest. She goes to the FBI. FBI doesn't want to hear it. You know why? You know why? He had legal custody of the kid when he went. So it's a civil matter for her, right? But this stuff goes all in the press, right? In Ohio, you know, judge gives custody of a child to a guy that's got a warrant and, you know, an order of protection. And the order of protection covered the girl. But the clerk never looked this guy up. No one bothered to look this guy up, right? He got thrown off the bench. He got do not retain because he got such bad press. He was do not retained off the bench in Ohio, right? And a couple years later, one of these, God bless them, one of these ladies that have nothing better to do but go through the internet, you know, to be in the do-gooders, she saw this little girl's picture, and she's like, that girl goes to school with my daughter. And she calls the mother and everything. Anyways, it was a whacked out case there. And the other one, remember up in Wisconsin, the police officer that got like really seriously injured by that wrestler?
Yeah.
And what was it? The judge gave him like double secret probation or something. And that judge got tossed because they made a big thing out of that. You know, here you got this guy beating up a police officer and he doesn't get any time. You know, and but on the federal level, that doesn't happen. Once you're appointed a federal judge, you have to be impeached.
It's to serve for life.
Yeah. Now you don't have to sit on the bench.
They have what's called senior judge status.
So one of the things that the president could do about that, right, the senior executive officer, if he's got a judge that's making weird findings or whatever, overreaching their judicial thing that they should know because they should have passed their 8th grade civics test, right? That he could eliminate their district. Just say, your district doesn't exist. You're not fired, you're a judge, but you don't have a bench to sit on. And then he could put the district under a different name, different number or anything, and reappoint a different judge. And say, you don't have it. But here's the cool thing, right? This is where the judicial branch has to self-police, which I don't see a lot of. I don't see Supreme Court coming down and censuring these people. You know, you're wasting our time. You should know better, right? Censure them. But they're not doing that. No one's self-police. The Congress doesn't self-police. The judicial system doesn't self-police. But when you wipe out that district, every other judge loses their bench too. And now, yeah, you're still getting paid as a judge. We've got this 3-foot by 3-foot cubicle for you to sit in at this computer, and here's a list of data entry that we want you to do. But you're a judge. You know, you're getting paid judge wages to do this. Right? So, and we want you there. We're going to have you on a time card. You're going to punch in and punch out. And here are your new hours: 12 midnight to 8 a.m. Or better yet, here's the kicker. Here, 8 p.m. to 8 p.m. to 4 a.m. Those are your new hours.
I would make them write a letter to each of the new citizens that gets sworn in during that quarter or that month or whatever. I would make them write a nice individual personal letter to each of those new citizens. And that would be their job function the whole time that they were there. That would be it. They would be writing a nice letter on behalf of the government to each of the new citizens. And I'd be checking it for grammar. I'd be checking it for punctuation. And I'd be checking it.
No, I wouldn't do it. I wouldn't do it. I would have another judge that's not sitting on the bench anymore check their stuff.
Right. Exactly. It would be busy work for the busy guys.
And here's the best part, right? The guy that writes the letter, he only writes the text. He doesn't put his header on it.
Yeah, right.
He doesn't put his signature on it, so no one knows where it's coming from. So that goes to another random judge that isn't sitting on the bench anymore. He doesn't know who it's from, right? And now he makes all the red marks and all over it and everything, and he bounces it back, right? So this guy's looking, oh my God, you know, and they do it to each other, and they don't know who they're doing it to.
Right.
Unless they start using code words.
Correct.
But yeah, all right, so there's a way. You just got to have the intestinal fortitude, like disciplining the lower enlisted, right? These judges are on discipline. Do whatever they want, whenever they want, however they want. Treat people however they want because they're a judge. They judge on their feels and not on the law.
Correct.
All right? Any judge that judges on their feels shouldn't be a judge. There's compassion. That's why you have extenuating circumstances. Oh, he's such a young man. I don't want him to spend the rest of his life in prison. He murdered 32 children. But he's such a young man. Look at him. He's so handsome. I go, yeah, he'll have lots of dates in prison. He'll make lots of friends. You know? But
you know, there's more to this than that. There, you know, if he's very resourceful, he could start do like a calendar of all the good looking bodybuilding prisoners in prison for the year. You know, like, and then he could promote that, and I'm sure there'll be tons of women that would want to buy that. Especially, you know, they'll be corresponding with that, and then they'll sell that calendar and then use it to help the prison, you know, system, you know, whatever.
The prison library.
So, yeah, I
buy more books
this.
for the prison library.
Exactly. Or, you know.
Yeah, it just the thing is, you need some discipline. You need some policing. If you don't have the discipline and the mentoring of the lower enlisted, right, of the GI Joes, the Navy, the younger Navy guys, Air Force guys, if they're not being watched, they will get away with murder. And if these judges aren't being severely disciplined, they're just disciplined in an embarrassing way, right? Where you made this finding, okay. I love President Jackson, okay, the Supreme Court has made their ruling. Now let them enforce it. You know, and here's these judges. They make the ruling, go, okay, nice ruling there, Judge. What are you going to do about it? You're going to find me in contempt and give me a fine? Presidential immunity, go pound sand. I'm in office. You can't do that. Yep, you want to read the Constitution? Should I read it to you? Are you incapable of reading? Did you just guess abracadabra all the way down on your bar exam? Managed to pass. And you got to have the fortitude, but you'll get, the press, who are your allies in this? Me, people that can think straight, people that can think for themselves, people that believe nothing. I believe nothing that I see on TV, half of what I hear on the radio, and everything I smell in the street.
Have a great week.
Great week. after a short hiatus there. Didn't get right after the call. I guess I'm late with my bayonet. All right. So, Paul, all right, about the death penalty thing. So, as you know, I'm against the death penalty. I'm just, it's weird, you know, because if I was in war and you gave me a machine gun and I had to machine gun down, yeah, okay, fine, you know, boop, you know, that's war, that's something completely different. Much like the Geneva Conventions, Geneva Convention allows for a death penalty. It does. All right. So if you committed a heinous crime in prison, you're in a prison or war camp, and you commit a heinous crime as a prisoner, they could give you the death penalty and they could sentence you to death, but you still have to have some due process there. All right. But I am against the death penalty for the same reason I'm against abortion. It's not God's plan, all right? What God's plan is for this guy that's now in our custody, in our care, all right? In our care as compassionate human beings, all right? I'm compassionate again about the victims, certainly. But, you know, it doesn't say any, I don't care if they throw the guy in a 4 foot by 4 foot by 8 foot deep hole and throw food down to him and wash him down once a day to make sure that all the filth gets washed down some drain, and just leave him there immobile in that hole for the rest of his natural life. That's fine with me. I'm like, okay, after what he did, right? That would be what I consider far more rehabilitatory than the death penalty. The thing is, yes, we have him now. And if you don't think, if people don't think that this guy was thinking of committing suicide by cop or suicide by National Guard, he wasn't. He wasn't. One, he wasn't clean shaven. Because when they commit, when in that culture, if they're going to commit a suicide attack, right? They're going to be clean shaven. They're going to go to heaven clean. This guy had no intention he was going to get away. He knew he was going to get away. If he got captured, he knew the system would keep him alive. Like, all right, we got Nadim Hassan. Dude's been cleared for execution. Absolutely cleared for execution. How many months ago? I mean, he has no more. He's completely out of any appeals. He's done. That's it. They could hang him at any day. Hang him any day they want, right? Oh my God, it's the end of the world. The plow just went by. I haven't seen one all morning. Now we just saw one. And it is snowing pretty nice out there. So he knows, right? And you say that the rumor is that his family has already left the country?
That's what I heard.
Yeah. So he knew what he was going to do. It was planned out.
No, I think the government picked him up and they're sending him away. They're getting rid of him because he's not here. There's no reason for them to stay here now. So they're going. That's what I heard.
It's probably for their own good too.
That would probably be.
Prevent vigilantism.
Right.
You know, if they're gonna put up a GoFundMe page, have them put it up somewhere else.
Yep.
So the guy's got status here. He's in the United States. He came over. He was given a refugee visa, probably under false circumstances or whatever. But he has status, so he's going to have to go through the whole due process, and it's going to drag. It's going to drag, and there will be people using we need to make sure that everyone gets justice, that they get due process and everything, to make names for themselves, to file appeals, to go and defend this guy. So I'm wondering do you think, which lawyer you think is going to defend this guy? Which big name is going to go out there and say, well, I'm going to defend this guy, give him the best defense possible?
I don't know. You'd be surprised at that. There's some people that they call true believers and stuff like that. I'm not saying that he necessarily has to be put up in front of a firing squad or something like that. I'm just saying I think the trial needs to be militarily, and I think it needs to be quick. And then he'll still get appeals. He'll get more appeals now than people in World War II got. But I don't think it belongs in our civil justice system because this wasn't a form of civil justice that needs to be done. It needs to be done. It needs to be done swift, and it needs to be done in a way that you can't bastardize the system and use it. Use your system against you to delay it and make more people out of it. And again, the faster this happens, the less of a chance that somebody else will do it because they're counting on it. And then, they're counting on some do-gooders 25 years from now, convincing somebody to put them on parole or to give them, no, let's do it now. And, whatever sentence he gets, whether it's 40 years making little rocks out of big ones and maybe gluing them back together again, or if he gets the death penalty, he doesn't have to get the death penalty as far as I'm concerned. He just needs to get a military tribunal type justice, and it needs to be pretty fast.
How does he fall under the military? How does he fall under military UCMJ, Uniform Code of Military Justice?
Well, I would view him as an enemy combatant in civilian clothes in the country, killing our military.
Oh, so you're going to have him as a spy, espionage.
Well, same difference. He'd get the same thing. But I want him tried right now. Give him his couple of months to get his, and you know what? I'm sure it's going to come out that there's some mental issues or something like that, and I'm okay with that.
The guy's probably got an IQ of 75.
Well, it doesn't matter. You got to remember something. You got to remember something. We just had the Slender Man girl. Okay, she's a woman now. She stabbed somebody 12 years ago, a 12-year-old. She's got, she's old enough now where transsexuals are breaking in and meeting her at night, helping her escape, and she somehow gets to Chicago, and then she walks to Posen. Okay, and then, but the whole point was there were 3 psychologists that said, hey, she's getting better, okay? And we need to put her in a group home, okay? And she originally got like 40 years. She wasn't convicted criminally. She was convicted in a mental health system, okay? We got to stop this. This stuff has to stop, because this is getting to be ridiculous. And my question is, will these psychologists now be in trouble? The 3 of them, that joined together and stuff like that.
How about the judges? How about the judges that bond guys out? Give them like no bond or very low bond. They're not getting in trouble. They're getting bad press, but no one's telling them, well, you can continue to be a judge, but you're never going to sit on the bench again.
Well, again, I'm going to give you 2 examples of that.
Okay.
There was a judge who was a friend of mine. He's since deceased now, and he was a very good friend of mine. And I was working bond court, okay. And I said to him, when the guy came up, I said, the state is seeking no bond, okay. Now I don't know what he was thinking, whatever, and he gave him a very low bond, and I said, Your Honor, we respectfully request that if you're inclined to give him a bond, to give him a high bond. No, I'm sticking with that. Okay. So what happened was the guy got out, and he killed the victim. And it just so happened that my parents and I were having dinner with this judge the next day. It was a Sunday. And I said, hey, I just want to let you know that I wasn't trying to be funny. I go, that guy killed the woman after you let him out. And then I said, next time, maybe when somebody tells you, a high bond or no bond, you might want to really consider that. And then as I was telling somebody on Thanksgiving, there was a judge one time, and nice guy, real nice guy, knew him really well, used to work with him before he became a judge. And I was working bond court, and my bosses told me to let him know there was a police officer, Seriali, that got shot under the vest, and he passed away, and the guy came up for bond. And it was funny, he came up for bond like twice in a week, and it was, the judge had let him go on a low bond the first part of the week, and he was out to be able to shoot the police officer. And I told him that, and he goes, I know you didn't do that bond hearing, but he goes, when that issue comes up, I'm just going to say that the state didn't prove their case.
Yeah, well, so he's passing it off on someone else.
Well, no, there's no way to prove that, because it was subjective, because he was the dude that let him go.
There's no way to prove that if you release someone on a bond, even on like an I bond, that they're going to commit a crime. You can't prove they'll go commit a crime. They could be as gentle as a lamb for the rest of their life. They could have had a come to Jesus meeting with Jesus in the lockup while they're waiting for the bond hearing, and said, I'm never going to do anything wrong. You can't prove that they're going to do something bad. But you know what? You can play the odds, because these judges, when they go to Vegas, they're not going to bet against the odds. They're going to play the odds, right? But with people, they're not going to, they're going, well, how do you know? How are you going to do? And they do it. And then with impunity, they do exactly what you said. Right? They said it was the state, right? How many times is a detective that the state loses a case because they just looked at it for like 10 seconds before it went to trial, never interviewed you, never interviewed the witnesses until right before the trial, never got anything going, and they get blown out of the water by a high-speed defense attorney. But it's my fault because I didn't do a significant enough investigation, even though I had to jump through 100 hoops to get felony. Well, one case in point with these judges is like, we have a do not retain thing, right?
Uh-huh.
When they come up for election, right. How many times do they got to go through do not retain before they're permanent on the bench?
No, they have to not get 70% of the vote in that election. So it doesn't matter how many do not retain. It's how they must get like 70% or 60% of they must be voted to be retained by at least 70% of the people voting in that election.
Well, I can't see how any of them are still on the bench, because I go down the list and I'm like, nope.
It's voting for judges. So a lot of people don't vote for judges because there's 20 pages of them. And so
I do.
Only the ones voting are the ones that, are motivated to vote. They either really dislike the guy, which is a small percentage, or it's they're voting,
party line,
or they're voting for the guys they like.
Right.
So that's why.
I had a case where this guy's in Ohio, right? And his baby mama gets an order of protection out against him, right? And a warrant for his arrest for beating her. So he's got a warrant and he's got an order of protection, right? He goes into court. He claims that she is abusing the child and not taking care of the child, right? And he gets, right, he's suing for custody now. But he's in this court, and he's got a warrant an order of protection. And now she gets notified and she says, this has got to be some BS. So she doesn't show up in court. So the judge gives this guy a default finding and says, you now have custody of your child. He goes to the daycare center, picks up his child in Ohio, and flees to Chicago with the child, kidnaps the child. She goes and says, where's my child? Well, the judge gave him legal custody because you didn't show up in court. And she goes, what do you mean? He's got an order. I got an order of protection against him and a warrant for his arrest. She goes to the FBI. FBI doesn't want to hear it. You know why? You know why? He had legal custody of the kid when he went. So it's a civil matter for her, right? But this stuff goes all in the press, right? In Ohio, you know, judge gives custody of a child to a guy that's got a warrant and, you know, an order of protection. And the order of protection covered the girl. But the clerk never looked this guy up. No one bothered to look this guy up, right? He got thrown off the bench. He got do not retain because he got such bad press. He was do not retained off the bench in Ohio, right? And a couple years later, one of these, God bless them, one of these ladies that have nothing better to do but go through the internet, you know, to be in the do-gooders, she saw this little girl's picture, and she's like, that girl goes to school with my daughter. And she calls the mother and everything. Anyways, it was a whacked out case there. And the other one, remember up in Wisconsin, the police officer that got like really seriously injured by that wrestler?
Yeah.
And what was it? The judge gave him like double secret probation or something. And that judge got tossed because they made a big thing out of that. You know, here you got this guy beating up a police officer and he doesn't get any time. You know, and but on the federal level, that doesn't happen. Once you're appointed a federal judge, you have to be impeached.
It's to serve for life.
Yeah. Now you don't have to sit on the bench.
They have what's called senior judge status.
So one of the things that the president could do about that, right, the senior executive officer, if he's got a judge that's making weird findings or whatever, overreaching their judicial thing that they should know because they should have passed their 8th grade civics test, right? That he could eliminate their district. Just say, your district doesn't exist. You're not fired, you're a judge, but you don't have a bench to sit on. And then he could put the district under a different name, different number or anything, and reappoint a different judge. And say, oh, you don't have it. But here's the cool thing, right? This is where the judicial branch has to self-police, which I don't see a lot of. I don't see Supreme Court coming down and censuring these people. You know, you're wasting our time. You should know better, right? Censure them. But they're not doing that. No one's self-police. The Congress doesn't self-police. The judicial system doesn't self-police. But when you wipe out that district, every other judge loses their bench too. And now, yeah, you're still getting paid as a judge. We've got this 3-foot by 3-foot cubicle for you to sit in at this computer, and here's a list of data entry that we want you to do. But you're a judge. You know, you're getting paid judge wages to do this. Right? So, and we want you there. We're going to have you on a time card. You're going to punch in and punch out. And here are your new hours, 12 midnight to 8 a.m. Or better yet, here's the kicker. Here, 8 p.m. to 8 p.m. to 4 a.m. Those are your new hours.
I would make them write a letter to each of the new citizens that gets sworn in during that quarter or that month or whatever. I would make them write a nice individual personal letter to each of those new citizens. And that would be their job function the whole time that they were there. That would be it. They would be writing a nice letter on behalf of the government to each of the new citizens. And I'd be checking it for grammar. I'd be checking it for punctuation. And I'd be checking it.
No, I wouldn't do it. I wouldn't do it. I would have another judge that's not sitting on the bench anymore check their stuff.
Right. Exactly. It would be busy work for the busy guys.
And here's the best part, right? The guy that writes the letter, he only writes the text. He doesn't put his header on it.
Yeah, right.
He doesn't put his signature on it, so no one knows where it's coming from. So that goes to another random judge that isn't sitting on the bench anymore. He doesn't know who it's from, right? And now he makes all the red marks and all over it and everything, and he bounces it back, right? So this guy's looking, oh my God, and they do it to each other, and they don't know who they're doing it to.
Right.
Unless they start using code words.
Correct.
But yeah, all right. So there's a way. You just got to have the intestinal fortitude, like disciplining the lower enlisted, right? These judges are on discipline. Do whatever they want, whenever they want, however they want. Treat people however they want because they're a judge. They judge on their feels and not on the law.
Correct.
All right. Any judge that judges on their feels shouldn't be a judge. There's compassion. That's why you have extenuating circumstances. Oh, he's such a young man. I don't want him to spend the rest of his life in prison. He murdered 32 children. But he's such a young man. Look at him. He's so handsome. I go, yeah, he'll have lots of dates in prison. He'll make lots of friends. But
there's more to this than that. If he's very resourceful, he could start do like a calendar of all the good looking bodybuilding prisoners in prison for the year. And then he could promote that, and I'm sure there'll be tons of women that would want to buy that. Especially, they'll be corresponding with that, and then they'll sell that calendar and then use it to help the prison, system, whatever.
The prison library.
So, I
buy more
see
books
this.
for the prison library.
Exactly. Or
Yeah, it just the thing is, you need some discipline. You need some policing. If you don't have the discipline and the mentoring of the lower enlisted, right, of the GI Joes, the Navy, the younger Navy guys, Air Force guys, if they're not being watched, they will get away with murder. And if these judges aren't being severely disciplined, or just disciplined in an embarrassing way, right, where you made this finding, okay, I love President Jackson. Okay, the Supreme Court has made their ruling. Now let them enforce it. And here's these judges. They make the ruling, go, okay, nice ruling there, Judge. What are you going to do about it? You're going to find me in contempt and give me a fine? Presidential immunity, go pound sand. I'm in office. You can't do that. Yep, you want to read the Constitution? Should I read it to you? Are you incapable of reading? Did you just guess abacadabra all the way down on your bar exam? Manage to pass. And you got to have the fortitude, but you'll get, the press, you don't, who are your allies in this? Me, people that can think straight, people that can think for themselves, people that believe nothing. I believe nothing that I see on TV, half of what I hear on the radio, and everything I smell in the street.
Have a great week.
Great week.